Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. Gwynne Guibord. I'm the president of the Guibord Center Religion Inside Out, whose mission is to bring people together to challenge assumptions, unleash the holy, and affirm the faith that transforms the world. It is my real honor to have someone who has emulated that mission statement all of his life, and that's Swami Kriyananda. Before I begin in conversation with him, I want to share just a few of his many, many accomplishments. Swami Ji has founded 9 international communities in 3 continents, including an Ananda community in Los Angeles. He has authored more than 150 books on topics such as yoga, meditation, Western philosophy, self-help, the arts, and more. And he has composed over 400 pieces of music, including an award-winning oratorio dedicated to the life of Jesus entitled Christ Lives. He has shared all of his life the yoga teachings of Yogananda, who brought yoga to the West in 1920 and lived here for many years of his life. And Swami Kriyananda himself has lived in Los Angeles for 14 years, has recently returned to be with the Ananda community, and also to launch his latest book, Yogananda, Autobiography. I have read this book, and it's compelling and sweet and generous of personal reflections with Yogananda, and I would commend its reading to all of you. Swami, I am so privileged and delighted to share this time with you, and I thank you for your generosity.
Thank you.
Of
I should correct one thing you said. It's 141 books.
104, now including... Oh,
including that.
okay, wonderful. That's a wonderful... Yes, now 141 books, including his latest book. Swami, in beginning my conversation with you, how did your family relationships help to shape you into a person that really led you to devote your life to God and to service?
Well, in actuality, I don't think they really helped, except as sand may help to hone or sharpen a knife. My mother, yes, my mother did. She was a devout Episcopalian. She had a lot of devotion to God. And when she first was carrying me in her womb, she felt a great joy, and she said that this first child, she kept praying constantly, this first child I give to God. So that was a great blessing. From then on, I think the blessings rather descended. Anyway, in spite of everything, my reasoning told me I wanted desperately to know what truth is. And truth, I first thought, was I didn't want to believe in God, because the way God had been presented to me in the church didn't impress me. And so I tried to think in terms of truth through science, I wanted to be an astronomer. Then I thought of it through politics, and I realized that maybe truth has to be an inspiration, so I thought it through the arts, especially through music and poetry. And then I finally realized that everything just has to, nothing can be answered without God. And I remember I was studying playwriting in South Carolina back in 1947. I was 21 at the time. And I took a long walk out into the night. And I said, if there's a God, what must he be? And I thought, well, he can't be just a policeman up there or a judge. He's got to be more than that. He can't be somebody waiting for us to commit sin. He has to be loving. But what makes him lovable? And I finally decided he has to be consciousness, because I'm consciously asking this question. Therefore, I have to be a part of that consciousness. And if I'm a part of that consciousness, then I must open my mind to him more. because when I drink alcohol, I'm less open. There are times when my mind is more open. I must find ways of becoming more and more open to him. And I resolved that night that my purpose in life was to seek God.
Yes.
I thought for a while I was going crazy. I'd never read about saints. My mother had adoration for the saints, but she would tell me about their miracles, and I'd say, "Come off it, Mother. Things like that don't happen." Anyway, I decided I had to find God, and I thought to become a hermit in some jungle where I could live cheaply. First thing I thought was, if I'm a hermit, I can't smoke, so I had to give up smoking. And so I remember working on that one. Every time I'd drink coffee at lunch, I would think that smoke tasted so good, and I'd go back to it. Each time I went back, I never said I have failed. I always said I have not yet succeeded. And so with that constant affirmation of potential success, after a year I finally left it, and it never meant anything to me again. And I wanted to be a hermit, as I said, but I thought, was I going crazy? And I went up into the countryside of New York, into Indian Village, and thought maybe what I need is just to get closer to nature. And I would see the dewdrop on a leaf, and I'd say, that's beautiful. But I can't feel that beauty. And so I realized finally, no, it can only be God. And so my father, this was God's way of helping me. My father was sent by his company, Esso, to explore for oil in Egypt. And the reason I say it was done by God is that he found where they would find oil, and the company sent him to France. And Mobile came in there and found oil just where he'd said it would be, but they weren't meant to stay there. And my mother, the day I put her on the ship to go join him, I went uptown New York, and I found Autobiography of a Yogi. And I knew that was for me. I took the next bus across the country, and I never imagined saying these words to anyone. I said to Yogananda when I met him, I want to be your disciple. I've been that now for 64 years. And really, he accepted me right away. Took me about half an hour, took him about half an hour.
Swamiji, I want to return to that moment that you shared when you were outside and you were, in the retelling of that experience, you were tearful with it, and which to me was an indication that that experience filled your heart. And what is it about our human nature that when we have those profound experiences, we are moved to tears?
Because feeling is the reality of consciousness. God is feeling more than reason, and that feeling is bliss. It's like Swami Shankara in India many centuries ago defined it as Satchidananda, ever existing, ever conscious, and my guru added the expression, ever new bliss. That explains even why he created the universe. The nature of bliss is to want to do things new and constantly new, to express itself in new ways. And so we were made from that bliss. This is a very important thing that I didn't understand at the time, but God dreamed this universe. There was no other way he could have created it. Science today has discovered that matter has no reality except as a vibration of energy. And energy is a vibration of thoughts. And thoughts are a vibration of consciousness. Everything in the universe really is a vibration of consciousness. And so when we know that he His consciousness created us. We're his dream. Then we can understand that his nature is our nature. This is why everybody in the world is seeking happiness.
Yes.
They may be mafiosi, they may translate that bliss into lower octave of revenge. Most people seek it as pleasure. Some people seek it a more refined way as happiness. But the reality of it is that nobody will be satisfied, and this is what St. Augustine said. I do get teary when I speak of these things because they're deeply meaningful.
Yes.
But he said, thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in thee. And so we can't be happy until we found that bliss of our own nature. Reality is not just reason. Reason, you can't understand things by reason alone. You can see the outside, you can see how they're shaped, you can see their color, but in feeling you can relate to them.
Given what you've just said, you met Yogananda and within a very short period of time realized that you wanted to work with him and become his disciple.
I realized that before I met him.
Before you met him, and then you met him,
yeah,
and something was touched in you that drew you to him even more. What was that heart connection that drew you to him?
I think partly it was past lives. I think we knew each other many times, and I was his disciple from before. I think also it was the fact that he had so much love, and he was so full of bliss. I remember one time we were sitting downstairs in the basement. He was talking with some of the monks about potholes that needed to be filled after a heavy rain. And I was not in that job, so I was just able to close my eyes, and I felt these waves of bliss coming over me. And I remember one time out at the 29 Palms, where he had his retreat in the desert, I was leaving the room. I've had surgery on my eyes so I can see clearly now, but then I couldn't see clearly, so it was not the expression in his eyes, but I just felt this wave of love coming over me as I was about to leave the room. And these experiences with him, I can't say that I felt his love at that time because I was too intellectual, but I cognized it in some way. I knew he was genuine. One thing I noticed about him was that there was no sense of ego. I'd look into his eyes, there was no sense of personal reaction. I like this, I don't like that, and so on. Just infinity.
So one could almost get lost in the presence of him, it seems to me.
Yeah, I remember, however, and this is an important moment, I was sitting at his feet. He was editing his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, and I was thinking what a fortune it was, what a great good fortune it was to be his disciple. And after about half an hour he finished and asked me to help him to his feet, and he stood just this close to me, and he said, just a bulge of the ocean. In other words, don't look at me, it's all gone.
It's so wonderful to get to know about him through your love of him and your experience of him. It's quite joyful.
Makes it more real.
It makes it far more real indeed. How, in looking back, Swamiji, how did Yogananda form you as one of his leading disciples?
He had me with him a great deal. I was with him alone at the desert many times. I think he talked to me more deeply than he did to the others. He saw that I understood, and he gave me explanations of the teachings that I hadn't heard elsewhere. It was whenever he talked to a group of monks, he'd always look at me. And I always sort of regretted because I wanted to close my eyes and meditate. But those are the ways. It was not classroom study
Right.
with notes and so on.
Right. So part of it was just the experience of being in the presence of the ocean of love that he exuded.
I'd say that was the major part. Yeah. Somehow he worked from inside. I remember one time, though I told you I was intellectual, I was a little proud of being intelligent. And I didn't like that quality in me. And I finally one day I faced it just head on. And I said, "I'm sick of you, get out!" Like that. And it really, from then on, I've never felt it.
Sure.
I've known I was intelligent. It hasn't made me proud.
Wow.
It just,
Yourself listened to you.
oh, myself listened to me.
Yes.
When I came out of that meditation, I saw him standing on the tennis court looking out over Los Angeles, and he touched me on the head. He said, "Very good."
Oh, that's lovely.
He knew every thought. You know, I was I was supposed to give a yoga postures at a bar mitzvah in Beverly Hills. I'm not Jewish, and but they wanted a demonstration of the yoga posture, so I went. And a Jewish psychiatrist who was very materialistic started grilling me about my beliefs, and I was trying to explain to him, and I spoke to him about certain miracles that I had seen and so on. And I could see that he was thinking, well, Wednesday at 11 I could see this patient.
Oh dear.
And so anyway, I realized I wasn't getting through it all. And 2 days later I was with Yogananda. I often served him lunch for his guests, and then he'd sit and talk with me afterwards. And he said, "By the way, when you're with materialists and atheists, don't talk about miracles." I said, "You knew?" He said, "I know every thought you think," which was an astounding statement, but he proved it many times.
Was that, did that
No,
throw
not at
you a
all.
bit for a loop, or?
Not at all. I wanted him to know me so that he could change me. So I said I was open to him.
Swamiji, wasn't planning on asking you this, but I'm very curious about when you speak of bliss. There is so much dissension in the world, and it seems that as a humanity, we as a collective are constantly making decisions about who's holy and who isn't, who belongs on the inside, who belongs on the outside, and we become very tribalistic.
You know, that's why my distributor of my books in Italy said to him, "I'm not very religious." I said, "Neither am I."
But what do you think, what is the cause of that division that we create amongst ourselves?
Well, one thing is obvious, lack of humility. Another is that we think that we can freeze God into little boxes. And you can't do that.
No.
All paths lead to Him. There are many paths up the same mountain. You reach the peak, you see it's all the same. So all the different sects, they do their good, but they have limitation if they try to limit your thinking as to who God is. Whatever you can say about God, He's that and more.
Yes, yes. And again, you are moved by that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is moving. Yes. You, I wanted to ask about, you have formed so many Ananda communities worldwide. What led you to take up the work of forming Ananda as an international community?
Well, there were two things. One was from myself. At the age of 15, World War II was raging, and I was feeling sad about it, and I was thinking that the ideal thing would be to form a community where people could preserve human values and share them. And I wanted to start a community. And I talked to my friends about it, and they were all for it until they found I was serious. Then they fell away. Then, when I met Yogananda, I found that this was one of his fundamental ideals. One time he was in Beverly Hills again, at a garden party. Mrs. Clarence Myers was hosting it, and there were about 800 people there, including Hollywood dignitaries, directors, stars, etc. And at the end of it, she was doing it as a fundraiser for Yogananda's work. And so she asked him if he would like to say a few words. Well, you know when when you're asked to give a talk at a garden party, you sort of thank your hostess and thank the guests and hope they've had a good time and say, I've loved being here, and say, perhaps if you're a spiritual teacher, some worthwhile truths to share with others, and that would be it. He didn't follow that model at all. The moment he started speaking, he said, "This day mark the beginning of a new era. I am sowing my thoughts in the ether, and my words shall not die." And he went on like that. My God, it was powerful. And he talked about the need for thousands of youths forming communities. He saw this as the aid of the future when depression would come. He said people need to get into the country and grow their own food, build their own buildings, live simply. We're living a false life in the big cities. And so he talked very strongly on that.
What is it about the Ananda communities that causes them to thrive so when other communities are very, very short-lived?
I don't know. I think partly because we love God, partly because I've set them an example of harmony, not bickering, partly because I let people have the say rather than trying to take it all myself. I delegate responsibility, and the first years were very difficult, but I remember one time I had to call the community together, and I said, I'm tired of all this bickering. I said, I don't speak up strongly very often, but when I do, I expect you to listen. If you don't want to, I'll leave here and never look back. I said, I'll give you that choice. And about 50 people left that day. But I was not dumb. I made sure I had the majority on my side before I called that meeting. And from then on, we've thrived.
What are some of the principles that Ananda lives by, Swami?
We live by kindness, first of all. It's one thing they're lacking in. We live by generosity. We try to help other people. When we live in, there are two basic principles. One is people are more important than things. And the other is yata dharmas tata jaya. Where there is right action, there is victory and success. And there have been times when choosing could have made me, I could, in taking this choice, have ruined everything, and yet I refused to follow it. One time when Ananda was very young, and I was earning all the money myself, giving yoga classes and so on, and a young man came to me and said that I've inherited a certain amount of money, and I would like your advice. I think he must have had a lot of faith in me, because he asked me this. He said, if I join Ananda, I'll give my money to Ananda. But I also have this feeling that I might like to go to India. I said, you should go to India. I wasn't even tempted. I didn't even feel tempted. I said, you should go to India. I felt that if he had really wanted to join Ananda, he'd have said, I want to join Ananda.
Right.
And there have been several times when my integrity was tested, but always I've chosen failure itself, if necessary, over wrong action.
That's an interesting comment that you just made. There are those studies where people who are highly successful,
Highly what?
successful with however we may define that, when they come up against a bump in the road, they pull back, evaluate it, and try going about it from a different avenue.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true.
And it sounds like that has been the way that you have lived much of your life.
Yeah, but I've met many swamis in India who started their organizations and cut a few corners.
It doesn't work, does it?
Sometimes serious corners, like one man was trying to create a hospital. He wanted the land of some people nearby who had retired and they didn't want to sell. And a truck hit them and killed them on the road, and the driver ran away. And you just wonder.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
The Ananda have educated many, many, many youth, and would you talk
We
about
have a
that?
school, we call it Education for Life. It's based on Yogananda's school in Ranchi. And here again, the reason I began it was because SRF hadn't started a school. So, but we have many parents with children living in our communities. It's not just for renunciates. And they want their children to have a good education. So I wrote a book called Education for Life. And it's been pretty popular. I had a large launch of it in the largest hall in Rome, more ancient than the beginnings of our own country. It started in 1716 or 17, I think. Anyway, it's a very good book, and it teaches how to raise children to be happy in life, how to respect other people. My basis of morality, as I've explained it, is that when you do the right thing, you're happy. If you do the wrong thing, you're not happy. That's the best guide to whether a thing is right or wrong. And yes, a person may say, well, it makes me happy to get revenge. But if you step back a little bit, you'll see that's not happiness.
I love the line that I've heard before, that there's no right way to do a wrong thing.
To which?
There's no right way
To do a
wrong thing.
Well, that's certainly good.
That's a wonderful line.
Very
isn't
good.
it? Yes. In watching these children who are educated through this system, do you see a difference in how, as they become adults, how they live differently in the world?
They do. But you know, we have objective tests too. One is that in our national we have national exams in America. They come in the 99th percentile. That's pretty high up.
Wow, that's very high.
The other is that our children, if they're forced to leave to go to another school or whatever reason, they always become leaders and outstanding students.
That's very
So
interesting.
those things prove it too.
That's interesting, given that humility is such an intrinsic part of the philosophy.
Yes, but why should that be? Humility is not self-effacing. Humility is feeling God is the doer. So you can be a shining star and try to shine more, but realize He does it all.
Yes.
That's the answer.
But however, that's often antithetical to the way that we certainly live in the
Yes.
United States.
Yes, children are raised and it seems to be their nature to compete. But we don't compete in that way. We had a child in a race a few years ago, and somebody said to him, did he win? No, but I won against myself.
Oh, how lovely. That is lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that gives you bliss, doesn't it?
That gives you bliss.
Yes, yes. How did you describe your work, if you would, Swamiji, in founding Ananda communities in India?
Well, we're starting only there, so we can't say that we have succeeded yet, but I think the Indians are going to prove more open to these things than anywhere else. There's a devotion in their nature that makes them open to these truths. And so we'll see, but I think it's going to do wonderfully.
So prayers surround that
Absolutely.
wonderful, wonderful effort.
Yeah.
Swamiji, when Yogananda was asked who would take his place after he would leave his body, he answered, "Only love can take my place."
He didn't ask, he wasn't asked who will take your place, what will take your place,
Right.
yeah. He said, only love will take my place.
What will be your legacy?
I hope my legacy will be the truths that I've expressed in my books, the harmony that I've been able to create in a large number of people together, because there really is harmony. I know somebody was visiting there recently. He said, I didn't meet one unkind person. And that kindness, I would like that to be a legacy. I would like living together and working together be a legacy. I would like to think that seeing things in new ways is a legacy. We should look at everything anew. So all these can be my legacy.
And that's how you wish to be remembered.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you have impacted thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. You have lived a truth. And Swami, I want to thank you with my whole heart for this time with you. It has been my joy. Thank you, Swami.
I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you.